On August 3rd, Japan's Ministry of Finance did something it hasn't done in 27 years. It called Washington, and together, the two governments spent tens of billions of dollars buying yen at the exact same time. Not since 1998 had Japan and the United States coordinated a currency intervention like this. Tokyo alone reportedly sold close to $59 billion to buy back its own currency. The yen jumped immediately, gaining almost 4% in 2 trading sessions, hitting a 3-month high. For about a week, it looked like it worked. Then it started falling again. By August 11th, the yen had already given back half of what that historic, coordinated, 2-country intervention had bought it. It's sitting back around 159 to the dollar as I record this, creeping toward the psychologically important 160 level that traders have been watching all year. 2 governments. Tens of billions of dollars. The first joint intervention in nearly 3 decades. And the market shrugged it off in under 2 weeks. In this video, I'll show you why that happened. What's actually broken inside Japan's economy that money alone can't fix, and why some of the same people warning about this call it the financial equivalent of setting off a chain reaction that reaches well beyond Japan's own borders. So let's get into it. Start with why this currency matters as much as it does, because the yen isn't just Japan's problem. For decades, it's been one of the cheapest currencies in the world to borrow. Interest rates in Japan sat near zero, sometimes below zero, for the better part of 25 years, while almost every other major economy kept rates meaningfully higher. That gap created one of the largest, quietest trades in global finance. Borrow cheap yen, convert it into dollars or other currencies, and invest that money anywhere else in the world, offering a better return. It's called the yen carry trade, and at its peak, estimates put trillions of dollars flowing through this exact mechanism. As long as the yen stayed weak and Japanese rates stayed near zero, the trade printed money for anyone running it. Here's the problem. That trade only works in one direction cleanly. The moment Japanese rates start rising, or the yen starts moving unpredictably, the entire trade has to unwind, fast, because the math that made it profitable stops working. And unwinding a trade of that size doesn't happen quietly. It happens as a scramble, everyone trying to close the same position at roughly the same time, which is exactly the kind of pressure that's been hammering the yen and rattling global markets throughout this year. That's the backdrop. Now let's look at what Japan actually did about it, and why the fix keeps failing. The textbook fix for a weakening currency is simple. Raise interest rates. Higher rates make a currency more attractive to hold, which should, in theory, pull money back in and stop the slide. Japan did exactly that. The Bank of Japan raised its key interest rate to 0.75%, the highest level in roughly 30 years. For a country that spent a quarter of a century near zero, that's a genuinely significant move. And the yen kept falling anyway. That's the detail worth sitting with, because it tells you this isn't a simple, textbook currency story. When a rate hike doesn't stop a slide, markets aren't reacting to the number itself. They're reacting to what the number signals about everything else. And in this case, what they heard wasn't confidence. It was hesitation. Analysts covering the decision pointed to the lack of more aggressive, hawkish messaging alongside the hike, meaning the Bank of Japan raised rates just enough to say it had acted, without convincing anyone it was prepared to keep acting if the currency kept sliding. Markets don't reward hesitation. They punish it, because hesitation tells traders the central bank is more worried about something else, probably Japan's own debt burden, than it is about the currency itself. And that worry isn't irrational. Here's the number that explains the hesitation. Japan carries one of the highest public debt loads of any developed economy on Earth, well above 200% of GDP by most measures. Every time the Bank of Japan raises rates, it doesn't just make the yen more attractive. It makes servicing that enormous debt pile more expensive too, since a huge share of Japanese government bonds need to be refinanced at whatever the current rate happens to be. Raise rates aggressively enough to actually defend the currency, and you risk triggering a different crisis entirely, one centered on the government's own ability to keep affording its debt. That's the trap Japan is sitting inside right now. Raise rates too slowly, the yen keeps sliding, and inflation keeps squeezing households through higher import costs. Raise rates too fast, and you risk destabilizing the bond market that's funding the entire Japanese state. And this is exactly where the politics enters the picture, because the person actually setting fiscal policy right now is proposing to spend an enormous amount of new money at precisely the moment the currency needs the opposite signal to stabilize. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has put forward a public-private investment plan worth roughly 370 trillion yen, close to $2.3 trillion, running all the way through fiscal year 2040. A large chunk of that, around 102 trillion yen, is earmarked specifically for AI and semiconductor development. She's also proposed cutting the consumption tax on food, a move estimated to cost the Treasury around 4.4 trillion yen in lost revenue. Think about what that combination actually signals to a currency trader watching from outside Japan. A government proposing trillions in new long-term spending, on top of an already massive debt load, at the exact moment its currency is testing 40-year lows, and its central bank is visibly reluctant to raise rates aggressively. That's not a government sending a message of fiscal discipline. It's the opposite signal, and currency markets are very good at reading exactly that kind of signal, regardless of what any single intervention or rate decision says on its own. Go back to that carry trade mechanism from part 1, because this is where it stops being an abstract finance concept and starts explaining why traders in New York, London, and Singapore are all watching a currency most of their clients will never personally hold. Trillions of dollars, borrowed cheaply in yen over the past 2 decades, sit invested across nearly every major asset class on Earth. US Treasury bonds, global equities, real estate, emerging market debt. When that trade has to unwind, and unwind quickly, the money doesn't just quietly return to Japan. It gets pulled out of whatever it was invested in all at once by enough different players simultaneously that it shows up as real, measurable pressure in markets that have nothing directly to do with Japan. Some analysts have pointed to rising US Treasury yields as a symptom of this exact dynamic. If a meaningful share of the capital that's been quietly propping up demand for US government debt over the past 2 decades came from investors funding those purchases with cheap borrowed yen, a disorderly unwind of that trade doesn't just hurt Japan. It removes a source of demand for US debt at exactly the moment that debt needs buyers, pushing yields higher and borrowing costs up for an economy that has nothing to do with the Bank of Japan's decisions. That's the chain worth understanding clearly, because it's the difference between Japan has a currency problem and Japan's currency problem is quietly connected to how expensive it is for governments and companies everywhere else to borrow money. One financial writer covering this described the unwind bluntly, comparing the scale of risk involved to the kind of shock usually reserved for far more dramatic geopolitical events. That's a strong comparison, and it's worth treating with some healthy skepticism rather than accepting it at face value. But the underlying mechanism it's pointing to, a multi-trillion-dollar trade unwinding faster than markets can smoothly absorb, is real, documented, and exactly what analysts across multiple institutions have been flagging with increasing urgency throughout this year. Here's where I want to be precise, the same way I try to be with every country I cover on this channel. This isn't a confirmed global financial crisis. Nobody serious is claiming that with certainty, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to make this video more dramatic. What's actually happening is narrower and, in some ways, more useful to understand. A specific, identifiable mechanism, the yen carry trade, built up over 2 decades of near-zero Japanese interest rates, is now unwinding under real pressure, and the size of that mechanism is large enough that its effects are showing up in places that have nothing obviously to do with Japan. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Japan's Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama have both publicly signaled they're prepared to intervene again if needed, and the joint intervention in early August was itself a signal that both governments understand the stakes extend beyond Japan's own borders. That's not a small commitment. Coordinated currency interventions between major economies are rare, specifically because they represent both countries acknowledging that a currency crisis in one place carries real risk for the other. So the question isn't really whether this matters beyond Japan. The bigger institutions and governments involved have already answered that by intervening jointly in the first place. The real question is whether anything either government does next can actually stabilize this, given everything covered in Part 2, about the fiscal and political pressures working directly against currency stability. At this point, it would be easy to write Japan off entirely, the same way it's tempting to write off any country in the middle of a currency crisis this dramatic. That would be a mistake, and it's worth being fair about the other side of this story before landing anywhere close to a conclusion. Japan isn't Indonesia, and it isn't Argentina. It remains the world's third or fourth largest economy, depending on how you measure it, with deep, liquid financial markets, a highly skilled workforce, and institutions that have managed far worse shocks than this one across the past several decades, including the aftermath of its own asset bubble collapse in the early 1990s. The Bank of Japan does have room to raise rates further if it chooses to prioritize the currency over debt servicing costs. The government could scale back or slow the rollout of Takaichi's spending plans if pressure on the yen continues building. None of that is off the table. And it's worth noting, the same way markets themselves are split. Some investors see this exact volatility as opportunity rather than warning. The same pattern I've pointed out on this channel before, with other countries going through exactly this kind of stress test. Japanese equities have shown real resilience at points throughout this year, even as the currency struggled, which tells you not everyone watching this is convinced the underlying economy is actually breaking, even if the currency clearly is under real sustained pressure. So here's what actually matters. More than any single day's exchange rate, watch whether the Bank of Japan follows this rate hike with a second one, and how it messages that decision. A hesitant, single hike that markets read as reluctant is very different from a clear signal that Japan is prepared to keep raising rates until the currency actually stabilizes. That messaging difference is exactly what separated this rate hike, which failed to hold the yen, from the kind of decisive action that actually convinces traders a central bank means it. Watch whether Takaichi's government scales back the size or timeline of that 370 trillion yen spending plan in response to currency pressure, or whether it proceeds regardless. A government willing to adjust its own spending ambitions in response to a currency crisis sends a very different signal than one that treats the two as unrelated problems. And watch whether Japan and the United States intervene again. The Finance Ministry and Treasury Department have both signaled willingness to act a second time if needed. If that second intervention happens and holds, meaning the yen doesn't give back the gains the way it did after the first one, that's a meaningful sign the tide is turning. If a second intervention happens and fails the same way the first one did, that tells you something more serious than a currency correction is happening underneath all of this. Forget the day-to-day exchange rate for a moment. Over the coming months, those three signals, the Bank of Japan's next move, the fate of that spending plan, and whether a second intervention actually holds, will tell you which direction this is heading long before any official statement confirms it either way. If this video helped you understand what's actually happening with the yen, subscribe. This channel covers exactly this kind of story regularly. And if you're watching this from Japan, or you do business there, and the picture on the ground looks different from what I've laid out here, tell me in the comments. I read all of them.